one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have a pretty full agenda today and a pretty large crowd. I'd like to start off by reading a statement. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the South Lane School District Board of Directors. Thank you for taking time out of your evening to attend. For clarity, I would like to remind those in attendance that this is a meeting that is held in public according to the Oregon Public Meeting Law, which is not the same as a meeting with the public. As such, the board does not engage with audience members, which can feel awkward at times, but is the process prescribed in law. The board has the option, but is not required to set time aside to hear comments from members of the public. The board wishes to hear from community members, so there will be a public comment period after the consent agenda. Speakers who wish to address the board must sign up before the meeting using the sign-up sheet outside the boardroom or by contacting the district office. The board chair will recognize each speaker for a period of 3 minutes. We ask that speakers be seated at the designated table, clearly identify themselves, and state their home address before speaking. If multiple speakers are presenting on the same topic, please select one person to represent the group. Tonight, the board has allotted up to 30 minutes for public comment. If you are requesting to speak on an item not on the agenda, please contact the Secretary of the Board, Tanya Kearns, for a public comment request. Please note that the board is not allowed to hear any public comment about any individual or comments deemed in violation of policy AC non-discrimination. If a person begins to comment about either of these protected areas, the board chair will ask them to stop speaking and they must end their comment at that time. Okay, thank you. And moving on, next up, we have the consent agenda.
I move for approval 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Okay. We have,
Mr. Chair, I sent in an email on Friday at about 1400 hours asking that item number 4 be removed from the consent agenda and somewhere else so we can discuss it.
okay,
At the very least, move it.
I have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, now discussion. You asked that the item be removed from the consent agenda.
The purpose of consent agendas are for items that are routine and non-controversial. And I think if anybody turns on the news, watches the news, or social media, you can see that this issue is very controversial at the least. And that's the reason why I'm asking to have it removed from the consent agenda.
Okay. I should mention that because item 4 is about staff, to have any discussion about it at all will require executive session.
I have plans to ask for an executive session.
Not an executive session scheduled for this meeting. So we would have to do that at another time. I just want all board members to be aware of that.
Understood.
Okay. So the motion was to pass the consent agenda.
So we
And the
vote.
second.
Hmm?
And the second.
And
So
the
you have to
second.
vote on that first.
Okay, so then how do we,
Did you get a second from anybody?
Yes,
yes,
Tina.
yes, there was a second, and that's how. we went.
I did-
Second was
I-
for my. I don't know that I need a second. if
You
it's
have,
one member.
You have to second the,
You did not second the motion.
first motion, the first motion first. Well, I wasn't seconding.
And then you
Yeah,
have
that's for
discussion.
Right,
I'm
So-
sorry, so for my notes, then, Tina, your second was not for
The motion.
Sherry's motion.
No.
Oh, okay, I'll strike that.
And just so you know, there's not a second required on a request to remove an item from the consent. It just takes one member for any reason.
But in order to just have a discussion, you have to have a first and a second, and then you have a discussion and then you vote.
Okay.
right. So the motion was to pass items 1 through 4 of the consent agenda.
I'll second it, so we
Okay.
can.
I came in before the second. I made my comment before the
The
second.
discussion happens after the second.
Yeah.
Now we have your point. It's just a point of
Fair
order.
Okay, I'm learning here. I'm new.
Yeah.
I'm learning.
That's why we're explaining.
Taking it all in.
So is that a motion to remove item 4 from the consent agenda?
I don't know that I need a motion. I think it's just a request to remove it. I know that it only takes one person for any reason to remove an item from the consent agenda. I know that to be a fact. I got schooled last meeting on Robert's rules, so I went out and got a Robert's rules book and
But
did some
when,
research.
but when it requires the item to be taken completely off the agenda, which this one does because of the nature,
Okay,
the rest of the board has to vote.
okay. We have a second from Tina is what I heard, so.
Well, you have to vote on the first motion and second.
Okay, so the first motion is to pass the consent agenda as written. All in favor, say aye.
Question before we vote, if it passes, then is my request then expired?
I believe that would necessarily be the case.
That's why I made-
Would be approved.
That's why I brought up my request prior to you receiving a second. To interrupt that process, so that if the vote took place to pass it with a, let's say 4-3 or something like that. Then I could not make the request to remove it, which was made last Friday at 1400, so.
So I believe what you can do is have you state a new motion.
Okay,
Somebody seconds that one, and you can go ahead and vote on that one.
So-
And then see what the result of that one is.
so should we back up? Well, it doesn't take a vote to remove an item from the consent agenda.
It takes a vote in this case because you're removing it from the whole agenda, because it has to be moved to an executive session. That is not tonight.
That was not my intent. My intent was to remove it from the consent agenda, have the board decide where to put it down the road, and then if we just decided that we could not discuss it at a meeting, then we would turn it into an executive session.
And the chair already identified that legally it cannot be discussed in this meeting.
So it has to be executive session, but second.
Well, that's what you say, but now we're hearing that if we have this vote and it fails, that it stays in the consent agenda. I disagree with that.
Honestly, this is where it would be good to have a parliamentarian because this is an unusual situation that we haven't had to deal with before.
So I'm supposed to be the parliamentarian, the superintendent is.
Okay,
And so I would suggest that you vote on that motion if it has a second,
okay, which it does.
and then you'll know what the next step is to do based on it.
Okay, so based on that advice, we're taking a vote on whether or not to remove item 4 from the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? Aye.
Yeah, to remove it.
You
Oh.
voted to remove it.
Okay, so item 4 will be removed from the consent agenda. And we will have to, find a time when we can have an executive session to discuss item 4. Therefore, moving on, to the original motion, which now pertains to items 1 through 3 in the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Was that?
Were you
a little
opposed?
late. Were you opposed or in favor?
He's in favor.
Yes.
Okay, so
Your favorite
unanimous on items 1 through 3, item 4 to be moved.
Yes, sorry.
Okay, that's all
Okay,
right.
you're new.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, and with that, guess at the end of the meeting, we'll try and schedule when we talk about future dates.
Well, usually, our assistant sends out a notice to see when everybody's available, so we can see when to schedule it down.
All right,
And you have to give it how many hours or days for an executive session
At
notice?
least 24.
Yeah. I would think we need to do this as soon as we can.
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, so moving on to public comment. I have half a dozen people signed up for public comment on the sheet. Were there additional online who were speaking? Okay, and with that, I have Christopher Bellenbaum up first. Welcome, thanks for coming. Please state your name and address and your 3 minutes will begin.
Okay, my name is Christopher Bumwell and I live at 1132 Ash Avenue here in Concord. Hello, school board. As I said, my name is Christopher Bumwell. I'm here tonight as a parent and president of the PTA at Bohemian Elementary School. My kids have been going to school here for 5 years. I'm here to voice my support for the district being inclusive and to encourage the board to resist distractions brought about by hate speech. I have seen all hateful words posted on social media in the past couple weeks in protest of the new teacher in this district. What I've seen shows exactly the kind of bullying I thought the community was trying to get rid of. Something we are trying to teach our children not to do, yet the very same people who have the most impact in our lives are the parents have become cyberbullies themselves. I'd like to acknowledge and applaud the school board for adopting its non-discrimination policy, Code AC, and the All Students Belong policy, Code ACB. Gender diverse and queer individuals in our community, including students, parents, and teachers, deserve protection under these policies. They also deserve civic respect and love, just like anyone else. If enough of us are telling the haters to back off, it could pave the way for teaching students important lessons in life. Like that it's okay to be different from each other, and that we ought to treat each other with respect. I'd like to thank you for your time for listening to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Brian Parsons. I was wrong because that was the 2 lines. Is Brian online?
Yes, online.
Okay. Mr. Parsons, so Mr. Parsons, I read your letter that you sent today and, in violation of public speaking policy, it does call out, a district staff member. And so I'm afraid I can't allow you, to give that statement today. Next up is Ryan Davis.
Dave's.
Davis.
Yeah.
Okay. Whenever you're ready, so you can address and then time will begin.
My name is Ryan Davis. My address is 77721 Chisholm Drive, Canyon. I don't ever prepare for speeches, so I'll try to be concise and try not to ramble. I completely agree 100% with what the gentleman in the back said today, that we need to create an environment of love and inclusivity. We don't, however, need to create an environment of over-sexualization of our children or in spaces where children can see. I don't think that anybody is trying to dismantle the transgender or trans in general, or gender identity, or any of those things. I don't think that's the concern. I think the concern is when you put something out online publicly for people to see, even if it's private, if you put anything on the internet, people are going to see it. Kids are going to find it. Adults are going to find it. The video in reference has been seen 5 million times. 5 million times it's been seen. And that's not all just adults. It's a lot of people in our area. It's a lot of kids. Unfortunately, it's my kids. I don't go to London. My kids don't go to London, and I've heard about it. I don't have social media myself. I don't have TikTok or Twitter, and I've seen it. We've all seen it. That's a problem. Teachers need to hold themselves to a higher standard. You cannot be talking about deep throating and putting eggplant emojis on your social media where people can find it. It's just not appropriate. It shows a lack of understanding. It's a huge lapse in judgment. And I think even further, and I'm sorry, I've not met you yet, but I think being able to address it to the parents would have been better. To say, like, I know you said that you didn't find anything inappropriate about it, which that makes me concerned that you wouldn't find it inappropriate, because I feel like it's very obviously inappropriate. If the principal were to say that online, if the chief of police were to say something like that online, I feel like you would be concerned about it. And especially if it's someone who we don't know, they're a new hire. They've not been vetted yet, at least not by us, we're not comfortable with this person to be like, oh, that's maybe that they shouldn't have said that. it is inappropriate, and to say, I didn't find it inappropriate, it seems disingenuous to me. And the fact that there's so many people who are concerned about it, not just here, but again, all over the nation, 5 million people are concerned about it. I think to say, well, I just don't want to talk about it. I just don't think that's doing a service to anybody. I think that I would have felt more comfortable, because even if it's not your issue today, even if it's, it could be anything. It could be your issue tomorrow if you don't take issue with this. And then how do I know that you're gonna come to us and resolve that, I just felt like it wasn't genuine to say, oh, I don't think it's a problem and I don't want to talk about it. I think I would have maybe received it better to say, it wasn't appropriate. We asked them to take it down. Unfortunately, it has spread, and we will be looking into this further. I know that we don't have like a solid track record with this person. I think that I would have received that better and known that you were just, more genuine. So.
Thanks for having the documentary.
No, I appreciate it. I figured you'd cut me off at some point.
Okay, next up, Bonnie Sano.
Yeah, you have a technology guy here right now? They can pull that camera back so we can get the whole board. I don't mean to be on camera, but I get the people that are watching at home might want to see the whole board. Ladder. Next time, let's do the next one, just to make sure. I'll squeeze in with Joe.
Or it could be on the table.
This works for now.
I prepared most of this for the end of last year, and I did time it. My name is Bonnie Sano, 33739 Sejack Road, Cottage Grove, Oregon. I wish I thought that the South Lane School Board of last year was truly carrying out the ideals of equity, inclusion, and diversity for every student and family in South Lane, but I'm just not convinced that this was the case. As I saw it, the psychosocial changes that you were trying to bring about were political objectives from DC and Salem. One of my saddest memories is of Karen Carpenter, a singer from the 60s. She died from the effects of anorexia. No matter how much those around her who loved her dearly tried to change her weight perception, she still thought she was fat and kept losing weight to her dying day. They could have force-fed her with a feeding tube until she gained some weight, but that would not have changed her perception. I still grieve her passing. She was one of my favorite singers. I still have one of her albums. But I'm here today to talk about troublemakers. At last April's meeting of the South Lane School Board, the board members said a tearful goodbye to 3 of their solid team. It was like breaking up a family. They worked so well together. Few, if any, divisions or disagreements among them. Yes, a solid team of 7, 8 counting the superintendent. And there were a few others who worked for the board who solidly supported this team. Was South Lane School Board representing the views and concerns of voters, those constituents who put them in office? Evidently not, because the voters put 3 new members on the board. Do the new members think like the rest of the team? Can they be counted on for team solidarity? Do they adhere to the ideology coming from Salem and DC? Teamwork and groupthink seem to be the goal of last year's board, not necessarily the views and desires of the voters who put them in office. Beware the troublemakers, the ones who repeatedly disagree, no matter how logically or not, how eloquently or not, how kindly, how politely or not, they present their case. They are troublemakers. As one board member casually remarked off the record, at the end of last April's farewell meeting, we got rid of the last 2. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I reviewed the letter from the Parsons at home when I received it today, and I went back through it between speakers, and I don't see what you're seeing where it's referring to. It does say a teacher in our district, and I want to make sure we build up that
It's in the very first one.
where it says
Next
teacher in
up,
our
we have
district.
Sherry Yoss.
I'm not done yet. before we fill up the 30 minutes with folks, if Brian in fact signed up to speak first, I'd like to discuss that, whether we're all talking about a teacher in the district. And is that the reference you're talking about?
No, in the very first line, he calls out someone.
Recently, Yvonne
There
Curtis,
you go.
is that
Right.
a fact?
You found it.
Is that a fact? It was on the 11 o'clock news
Yeah, you just
on
read
Thursday
it.
night.
Okay,
How is
so
that improper?
Hmm?
How is that improper?
not allowed to call out staff members in your statements, period.
It doesn't, it's not calling anybody out, it's saying a fact. Recently, Yvonne Curtis viewed a video containing sexually explicit material published by a teacher in our district and stated on the news that it did not cross the line. That's a fact.
We need to stop.
In the ruling of the chair, the person is not allowed to speak because of the nature of the statements that they provided.
If they have.
And you're bound as a board member to abide by that and support the board.
If they have a complaint like that nature, what process should they take since they can't put this letter on? Should they file a complaint?
They should not call out individual staff.
I'm not asking you what to do, I'm asking you what they should. Should they file a complaint?
Yes, they should file it.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, we have Sherry Yoss.
My name is Sherry Yoss, and I didn't plan to speak tonight, because we didn't get any. What? Oh, 707 Shields Lane, Cottage Road. But this young lady back here pretty much said most of everything I wanted, but I also want to state that I have 3 grandsons. 2 of them have found new homes, but one of them does not have a school right now. And because he made a choice not to go back to London, he has not been accepted into another school because they're full. And I don't think that we're thinking of our children first. I think our children are coming second, and that really upsets me. I also sat down, I'm asking to see how many kids have left London School. And it will take probably next meeting, but I just made a little list of all the kids I knew. And I counted up 20 kids. I bought popsicles May of last year for that school. And there were 92 or 93, it says 93. I bought 93 popsicles. So if there's 20 kids, that's a huge percentage. And I know that there's probably more than that. So something needs to be done about for our families here in town, because they don't feel like they're being taken care of. And my husband went to school here, like I went to school here. If you guys send someone to us for a football team, baseball team, this weekend alone signed 4 checks for kids for school. We're very supportive, but now we need your support back to help my grandkids make it through in a way that we want them to be brought up. And it should be, if you're explaining sexual stuff, I don't think it should come from the school so much. You should let, as parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles, I know that's how I got my education, was someone sat me down and talked to me, and I think they're more comfortable hearing it that way than from somebody they don't know. And it doesn't matter their sexual orientation, it matters. But honestly, I did see, I wasn't really upset or offended until I read the Facebook, and I don't know how you could not be offended by that, because I know you have children. After I read that, I was fine until I read that, and then I became really disgusted and did not want my grandchildren in that school. And I don't know how any parent could have read that and not been offended by it. Like, that's wrong in so many ways. And as an employee at the bank, or like she said, you know, the police department, something like that was out, they'd be on probation, fired, suspended. That's not acceptable. I don't care who you are. That kind of behavior is not acceptable. At least not for me, it's not acceptable. Thank you.
All right, that is the end of our public comment section, and now we're moving on to reports and discussions. OSEA is not here this evening. SLEA, Emily. Okay.
My name's Emily Quindry. I've been an elementary special education teacher for 16 years. And I currently lead the Hawks Nest classroom at Harrison Elementary, where our main objective is to increase inclusive practices in the school, create shared learning opportunities, and grow the virtue of acceptance in all our Bobcat students. I'm the current president of the South Lane Education Association. It's nice to see all of you again, and I look forward to a productive year of working as a team to educate and serve the children in and around the community of Cottage Grove. Since this is a new school year and we have some new members here on the team, I thought it would be a good time to review language from some board policies, common practice for school board members in the state of Oregon. And the third part I removed. So first of all, I'm sure we can all agree that people with microphones tonight are viewed as, or at least the people sitting here having the opportunity to speak, are viewed as leaders among the groups we represent. As such, we have an obligation to conduct ourselves in a way that makes us worthy of the respect we are shown. Leaders are trusted to follow the contracts that we entered into with our positions. So according to the Oregon School Boards Association, a board member follows the codes of conduct and refuses to use board membership for personal or family gain or prestige, and announces conflicts of interest before board action is taken, refuses to bring personal or family problems into board considerations, gives the staff the respect and consideration due to skilled and professional employees, understands the chain of command and refers problems or complaints to the proper administrative office, presents personal criticism of school system operations to the superintendent, not to staff or at a board meeting, insists that all board and district business is ethical and honest, is open, fair, honest, and has no hidden agenda. This makes it clear that the board does not directly supervise district employees and should be careful to act through the superintendent in policy personnel matters. End quote. In the board policy code, GBNA, regarding hazing, harassment, intimidation, bullying, menacing, cyberbullying, staff section, it states that, quote, the board is committed to provide a positive and productive learning and working environment. Hazing, harassment, intimidation, bullying, menacing, and acts of cyberbullying of staff, students, or third parties by staff, students, or third parties is strictly prohibited and shall not be tolerated in the district. Retaliation against any person who reports, is thought to have reported, files a complaint, or otherwise participates in an investigation or inquiry is also strictly prohibited. Staff whose behavior is found to be in violation of this policy will be subject to discipline up to and including dismissal. Third parties whose behavior is found to be in violation of this policy shall be subject to appropriate sanctions as determined and imposed by the superintendent or board. Individuals may also be referred to law enforcement officials, unquote. As a special education teacher, I must comply with my contract for the safety of students and staff. If I don't, there will be consequences. Everyone in this meeting is under the same obligations. The SLEA union will continue to monitor and take legal action if necessary to ensure members of the board are held accountable for violations of their contract and our mutual compact to honor and value the respect and dignity of all students, which in turn covers all staff members of the district. And that's from your board policy about inclusive schools. I received quite a number of alerts, emails, and messages from very upset certified members, and then even warnings from administrators about disturbing words and actions in the community during the past couple of weeks, and even since board elections took place in the spring. My role as president is to represent members, give them a voice, and ensure they are protected from all types of harm. Therefore, I was compelled to deliver this message to you tonight. My hope is that school board meetings don't become a public place for hateful or divisive rhetoric, which in turn violates board policy. As a union member and local leader, I abide by the tenet that an injury to one is an injury to all. Thank you for your time.
Up next, we have Oregon Learners Annual Report from Jeremy.
Jeremy's in the other room, so we can give him a minute to get here.
Okay.
Emily, thank you for taking the leadership position this year. I know it's a thankless job most times. we're probably rotating a little bit this year.
He's coming.
Yeah, it's a simple deal.
Oh, for
Hi.
those of you who haven't met, I'm Jeremy Smith, Director of Teaching and Learning. We were combining that with the ELD. You want me to just do it all the way now?
Sure.
Okay. So each year we get so there's another agenda item further down that says the ELD report. And so this is going to be combined with that one. And
But the board will have to vote on that one, so it's fine if you report now.
okay,
But then when we get there on the agenda, then that's when the board will vote.
okay. So should I go now or should I wait till?
Go ahead and go now and
Okay.
do your report.
Screen there. So the Oregon Department of Education every year puts out a report about Oregon learners or Oregon multilingual learners. And those traditionally have been identified as English students who use English as a second language, or ESL. ELD is another acronym for it. And essentially it gives a summary of across the state how our students who are learning English doing in our schools. And if you looked at any data, you know that's an added challenge to students in classrooms. And so there are varying levels of achievement, but essentially it gives an overview of the whole state. We did actually pop up and it'll highlight places where there are the most language learners or the most students that might have interrupted education. And so there was one part in the report where we showed up, and that was we were, I think, the top 8 in the number of students that have what's called interrupted education. So the acronym is SIFE, which is students with interrupted formal education. And so that just speaks to, we're a pretty small district. And if you look at the other list of districts on there, they're all pretty big districts. And so they have 50 and 70, and we had 21 in our district, but that was the top 10 within the top 10 in the state. So for our size, it just gives you an example of the greater challenge that we're dealing with compared to some bigger districts.
And that was a percentage basis or?
That was actually just raw numbers. Yep. So of all the districts in the state, we're in the top 10 in terms of the raw number of students that we have that come in with what's called that interrupted education. So they have missed anywhere from 2 or more years of formal education before they've entered our system. So this is going to be kind of combined with my report on ELD, or English Language Development Services, that we have in the district. And this was in your board packet as well. There's a few links in there. So I'll give you the quick version, and if you have additional questions, we can go into more detail. But essentially, we've been working on creating a better model for serving these students for the last several years. We put together a steering committee, actually, when the COVID hit, and developed a 5-year plan and took a look at what we've been doing, what's been working, what's not been working, and what we want to change moving forward. In that plan, we decided to make a shift to try to serve our students at the elementary a little bit different. Right now, students that are eligible for those services, our program and our main service model happens at Bohemia Elementary. If students decide that they don't want to go to Bohemia, they still get services at the other elementary schools, but it looks a little bit different. And we prefer them to go down to Bohemia because that's where we have the most staffing and support. With that model, we have looked at the way that it happens, which currently is more of what's called a pull-out model. So students during the day who need those services will leave their regular classroom and they'll go into another room where they get that instruction from somebody who has more of a trained background with that. We are trying to work more towards the inclusive model. So what we are doing starting this year at Bohemia Elementary is called an integrated model. So essentially, those students, instead of leaving their classroom for a portion of the day and being taught in a different area, and potentially missing pieces of their regular classroom experience, the teachers are coming into those classrooms. And they're doing what we're calling integrated teaching, sometimes called co-teaching. So the classroom teacher and the language teacher are partnering together to teach, but not only to teach, but also to do planning together. So they have revamped their whole schedule in order to make sure that staff have enough time to make these connections, to do the planning. Had a really heartwarming story from one of the principals there of being able to observe this in the last couple of days, and the different instruction that was happening. They just got to see a couple of our English language learners really, like, literally perk up. Their body language changed, their facial expression changed when the instruction was delivered differently, when there was Spanish involved as well as English, and when they got a chance to become the experts on some pieces. So we're really excited about this model. We know it's a lot of work for our staff, and we know we also need to train them. So we partnered with a group called VIII, which has a training called Quality Teaching for Education Learners, or QTEL. And it's a pretty widely renowned training program to help instructors to gain skills in how to reach students who have that extra challenge. In all of this process, we realized that there's a lot that we're doing for kids that we haven't formalized in writing. And one of the things we found when we did that sort of historical look back is we realized in the last 10 years, our number of multilingual learners has actually doubled. We were about 10 years ago, we were hovering in the low 60s, and now we're in the 120s. So we know that this is something that is becoming more and more of a need. And so we felt even more compelled to make some changes that we thought were better for the students. So looking back, seeing the changes that we wanted to make, looking forward and realizing we were doing some things, we said, hey, it makes sense to formalize this. So what we did was we put together a couple of documents so that we could communicate out what exactly it is we're doing. We've shifted over the years. Let's be really clear with staff. Let's be really clear with students. Let's be really clear with parents and community. So the two documents that I'm going to ask you to take some action on later in the meeting is one that's called just South Lane School District ELD Services. And it pretty much just summarizes the statement that I shared with you about how we serve students, the model that we're moving to, if students aren't at Bohemia for that program, how they achieve services as well. And then there's also a document which is called the ELD waiver. So if parents are saying, hey, my child qualifies for these services, but I don't want my child to go to Bohemia, I'm going to get those services at another school. It explains that process to them. So that's my overview. I'll come back later and we'll do the approval, or I'm going to ask you to recommend the use and the implementation of those policies and practices. But before I finish with this part, any questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be back later.
All right. Next up, we have the South Lane Online solo update. Yep.
Well, Brian and I. So I just put a little background in the report for our new board members, just and just kind of to remind all board members when we because of the pandemic, when we decided that we needed to do a fully online opportunity for our students, and we had gotten the additional ESSER money, which is the Federal CARES Act money. We created our own online school called Solo. We knew when we did that likely we wouldn't be able to stay providing that separate school in that model. But we thought, well, we'll get some chance to see how it works, how does kids do, and so on and so forth. And then we got to this budget season, which was very iffy about where our funds were going to be and how many teachers we could afford. We also had really been working very closely with the principal and with the teachers in the school around how successful were the students. And there was a lot of effort put in on the part of the staff to try to get the kids to stay engaged and to stay moving forward. In fact, there were a lot of kids that we did allow to stay in registered in online that were not completing the courses, which really doesn't help. And so we got to the budget time and looking at the numbers, we said, we're not going to keep the separate school status. We're going to go ahead and start to integrate kids into the school, especially where we know it's better for the kids and their parents agree. But we'll continue to get, so that it's a smooth transition. If there are some kids who really, really feel like they still need the online option, we'll provide a way to do that. So fast forward to the current state, we requested of the state to end our separate school status for solo with ODE, which is something we have to do because of the way we take attendance in the system and it gets all reported. They have to keep track of what school the kids are in, obviously. So we finished that process. We do not have a separate school status. And we work really closely with all the administrators to see how would we integrate this. It's not an easy thing when you're trying to fit it into secondary schedules. We had very few elementary kids left, and most of them were left were not really super successful. It was also very challenging for parents because not as much of that curriculum was online. There was a heavier load that parents needed to support kids with at home. So we said, elementary kids just got to go back to their schools. So we did that. And then Brian worked with our secondary administrators to figure out how we can support the kids left that still wanted an online option. So I wrote here, we have 2 teachers that serve as teachers in our online program. Each teacher has a period during the day dedicated to online learning. Students will have access to online tutoring as well as virtual access to their teacher during the assigned period, as well as before and after school. Our current state right now is that there are 10 high school students and 2 middle school students enrolled in our online program. Several of these students have chosen to attend both online and in person, which we really like, because one of the things we heard the teachers say is that when they're fully online, and especially if they weren't even opening their video and they weren't engaging, is that it kind of went against our whole thing about wanting people to feel included and have our kids feel part of the community. So we invited those who stayed online to go ahead and take a class if you wanted to, even if it was just PE or art or elective, something like that, or participate in a sport or in a club. So I think we all felt good about we're serving the kids who want the online, but they're also getting a chance to connect with their school age peers and with staff at school if they want to. In the meantime, we also, at the conference that Tanya and I went to in the summer for administrators, met the director of the Evergreen Virtual Academy, which used to be, let's forget which one, ORCA, which stood for Oregon
Connections Academy.
Connections Academy. Thank you, team. And she said, you know, we're really looking at rebranding ourselves because we too are finding there's a social emotional aspect and a connection to community that kids need. But there are also some kids who really do need the online and do better in that. And so we're kind of looking for school districts that we could partner with and see how it would work to let the school district keep the enrollment. So we keep the money, but we pay them for the work that they would do with our students. That allows the kids to stay a part of our school community. And I said to Tanya, oh, she sat next to the right person. So when I got back, Brian and I got online with the director and said, tell us a little bit more about what you want to do and how is the state supporting that and so on, because there's a lot of legal lines and everything that we always want to be careful about to make sure the kids get what they need in their transcripts. So when they go on, there's not any negative consequences. So anyway, we are really looking forward to any new kids who might say, I want to do online, to try this opportunity with them to see how that would work. So we have a few things going on. We're calling this the transition year. And we know that our schools, some of them are here, or some of our administrators and our social emotional learning specialists are really trying to help those kids feel like they can be successful in our brick and mortar. In the end, what we realized, especially for the size of our district, we want so much to be an inclusive community that to have something that's so totally separate and outside our brick and mortar, just felt like it was hard to say we were really including that. And online education is really, really difficult and it's hard for kids to be successful. And we want to focus on our students who are coming to school in our schools every day and not feel like we also have to become excellent providers online because it's such a completely different thing. And this director at Evergreen Virtual Academy was saying, and we have that expertise and we have those teachers. And so we think it's a good next step for us to try. So there isn't any vote for the board to take. It's just, I wanted to give you an update on what had gone on with the status as well as what's going on with the kids who are in our schools. Thank you.
Questions, anybody?
Are there gonna be, do you have some students already in mind to do this with, or?
I'm gonna look to Brian, because he's doing that
I'm
work.
working with Chad Hamilton.
Okay, I
And-
wondered if it was gonna be special services.
Well, not just special services, but we're looking for students if, if there's a reason for whatever reason that they need something different, that's something that we can explore. We'll do that in small numbers so we can see how it goes.
I know that some kids learn differently and they need to be, do that rather than be where there's a lot of kids and distractions.
Right, right, and we try to accommodate as many different learning needs as we can, so I think this is a good option.
All right, that's you again, Yvonne, on
Yeah.
changing for professional development.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring to this conversation and just for new board members, we found that this is a great format to bring just about any topic that the staff brings to the board, whether it's a principal or a director or whatever, because it's the format that is consistent and has us give some background information and then have us be clear about why we're bringing it to the board. So we had planned to do our professional development 6-hour session on August 16th and had to cancel it. And it's so difficult for us to find another date that works for all of you, including our attorney. Our attorney was already driving here, so we still have to pay them for the time and those kinds of things. We also had a facilitator. And we missed the opportunity to talk about how we're going to run the meetings and what are going to be our common agreements and those kinds of things, which we do in all of our teams in the district. So what we in the end did, because of the availability of our attorney, who's bringing a lot of the content, she wanted to come in person, we wanted her to come in person, but she is also tied up with other districts in negotiations and stuff. So we're gonna postpone what we had planned to do on the work session on the 25th and put in the part from our attorney, which is roles, responsibility, ethics, the scope of the board work, that kind of thing. She's gonna do it online because that's the only way she could do it. She has negotiations all day. So that's the September 25th meeting, and I just wanted to make sure, for sure, we could all be there, of course, barring any emergency. And then for the October work session, would be where we would again postpone topics we were going to talk that we were going to put in that session. Instead, we would put the facilitated conversation around how we're going to run our meetings, what our agreements going to be, and so on. So I just wanted to call that out. That second date, the October one, didn't report. I think it's the 16th. And then also just wanted to say that when there is an urgency for board members, if you can give us 24-hour notice, we're supposed to put public notice out there if we're canceling a meeting 24 hours in advance. That's really what legally we're required to do, and we didn't have the 24 hours. So we are getting a lot of questions from administrators and staff around when is the board going to be doing their setting agreements and working on how they're going to work together as a community. That
So
was it.
do you need a commitment from all of us that we're gonna be at these? Is that what you're asking for?
Yes, either that or at least even a thumbs up that everyone can be at those two meetings. Both September 25th and October 16th. They're already in the board agenda.
Okay.
Proposed media.
Proposed meeting schedule, yeah.
They're always.
So if you give me a thumbs up.
For the record, I gave a 50-hour notice. That I wasn't gonna be in attendance, I was one of the members, but I also did state that I would be there virtually, so I was one of the two. I did not state that I would not be in attendance, I said that I would not physically be there. But I would make an effort to be there virtually, and that was 50 hours, just to clarify. And you also failed to mention that the attorney was stuck in traffic due to a traffic accident and wouldn't have been there on time either. So if you could let the staff members know that as well. Appreciate it.
Next one.
Yep. Moving on, we have community care coordination year in review. This comes with a fee.
Yeah. Are we gonna help me with it?
Yeah, are we doing that first?
Yeah, let's do that, but let me just say a little bit about what it is. And we have our two leaders sitting right in the front row, Heather Murphy and Sarah Canales. Community care specialists are people who have training and expertise in connecting our families to community resources. So we have lots of resources for community, for our families, but a lot of times the families don't know how to connect to those. And they don't know where to go. And often they come to schools, but then if the secretary doesn't know, or the principal doesn't know, and that's not really their expertise to know. So we started a strategy. Are we in our third year now? Anyway, we decided we would put a community care specialist in every school, and they would get specialized training around really how to work with families and how to get them to these services. They work really closely with also our interpreters. We have 3 interpreters. 2 of them are Spanish English bilingual. Our third one actually is a graduate of Cottage Grove High School, and she also speaks Hmong. And so she's trying, yes, that's one of the Guatemalan languages. So anyway, they work together as a team to help these families. We were recognized after our first year by the state in these efforts, right when kids were coming back after COVID, and people were saying, you know, students need access to mental health services, and we were saying, where are they? We can't find enough services. We didn't know how to connect them all the time. We wanted to have some of them even in our school where we could connect kids and families, but there just weren't enough who were out there ready to work. I don't even think there's enough licensed in the state for all the need. So the state, we were asked, would you guys be willing to be part of a pilot project where we would give you money, quite a bit of money, almost $1 million, to also train these community care specialists to help them make connections with mental health services and counseling, that kind of thing. And we said, sure, because they're already working with their families. So they gave us some money. They decided to add 3 other school districts to this try, and then they ended up getting more federal money for the project and used our district as a model. We're also working with these other 3, but they will be expanding the project later to add even more school districts. It's been so successful. So the way we work with the State Department, as well as these other 3 school districts, is we have some online meetings. We have two different levels of leadership meetings that we're involved in, 1 quarterly, 1 monthly. And then we get together, Sarah, is it quarterly, with all 4 schools, with the teams from all 4 schools, to just share ideas, what's working, what's not working, where you find being different resources and so on. So this summer, they had their 2nd annual summer kind of celebration, and let's learn from each other. And they videotaped people from the different school districts were there. And they sent it to us, and I'm so proud because our people are in most of the video. But we have the biggest team, so. Now you can start.
Over the years, we've learned that for students to learn and teachers to teach, their primary health needs need to be met. Fundamentally, what we've learned is that if we don't provide those needs up front, we miss the opportunity to prevent the onset and course of not only mental health problems, but health problems as well.
Principals had identified a need to have somebody in their building that really knew the families, could connect with them personally, and could help connect them to community resources, because we know there's a lot of resources out there and we know the need is there, but there wasn't this connection.
The Community Care Demonstration Project responds to the needs of Oregon students and families by providing a number of things. One is instruction and support on mental health literacy, and the second in particular is embedding community care specialists in school buildings. And their role is to support students and families in providing access to mental health and health services, but also things like clothing, food, housing, and other things that a student or a family might need on any given day. So the specialists navigate the system. They also interact with local systems of care and develop partnerships with local health agencies, mental health agencies, and other providers in the school environment.
I had a teacher from our alternative school send me an email at the end of last year, and she said, "Thank you for our CCS." She said, "For the first time in 18 years, I was able to completely focus on teaching."
Students aren't falling through the cracks. They're actually getting from one friendly face to another friendly face. It's amazing to have a place to bring it to and then have that connection up to the state.
A lot of the time, families reach out needing health insurance. I was actually able to host OHP workshops, so in person the families were able to come in and learn more about it and kind of soak in all the information, and then also have conversation about what else they need and what they've been struggling with.
Being culturally specific and having students and families have someone within the school that looks like them, that speak the same language, that we can understand each other on a cultural base has been really good, because they are letting me know what they need and I know exactly what they need, and that allows me and all of us in reality to go ahead and help them back.
We're still working with a lot of fire affected families in the FEMA trailers. A lot of our referrals were for housing and just trying to get them on housing lists, doing research. I learned that if you ask, like, so many people are willing to just give you free things or things at a discount, and they're more than willing to help.
We have a backpack program at our school where we load it full of food and kids come by and pick up that food and they take it home. We've also been able to provide bikes for a couple of kids this year who've had trouble. I know, does this fall under mental health? But it does. It's easier to have perseverance when there's hope.
I think what we're doing is creating that invisible bridge. We're making it visible. It always needed to be there, but it hadn't been built yet. We're like a giant snowball. We do all these little things. Some of them are bigger than others, but then eventually all these things add up and they make a huge difference.
They embrace their community, strengthening their trust in their relationships so that families feel better supported.
They literally save them. I tell them all the time, you're saving lives. We're thrilled that we're a part of it.
We encourage you to learn more about the project so that you can also develop caring, connected communities in your school.
Video, I think, was taken when we hosted one of the meetings, right? The first one. So in our early learning center in our La Plaza, we had the other 3 school districts here. We were the first ones to host. So it was fun.
Cool. Well, thank you. That's wonderful.
Great program.
Any questions before we move on to the next one?
How's this school year going so far?
Wonderful. Yeah, lots of excitement about this year for sure on all levels.
Thank you. And up next, it's also for you, Yvonne.
Okay. So at our July meeting, Dwayne, Tabby requested that we put the equity stance on the agenda for discussion. So I have provided some background information, a little bit of history of how and when it started, which was in the spring of 2020. We had a request from many teachers asking us to develop an equity policy or an equity stance. We already have an equity policy, which is the non-discrimination policy. So you don't really need another policy. It'd almost be restating kind of the same thing, and that always makes things more confusing. But we convened a team of students and teachers first, and then eventually added a couple of board members and some community members. But the students said, could we have an opportunity to draft a statement first? And we said, sure. And then we'll take a look at it and see how it goes. So we did that. This was when we were still in COVID, so everything was online. But the students brought the stance forward, and we did some editing. But for the most part, the team felt like they could support this stance as kind of where people were. At that time, I was also doing some online meetings with staff members, and so we had presented it so that staff district-wide, classified and certified, could give input to it. We invited the input, and so that's how we put together the staff. And then along the same time, the state school board drafted a policy for the legislature that was originally called All Students Belong. It was later renamed Every Student Belongs, and we were required to adopt it as a policy by that January 2021. We had that equity committee going at the same time, and so we brought the policy to some people in the air were on that committee as well. We had administrators on it as well, and looked at the policy. There's also an AR that goes with it, so we looked at all of those. And we realized one of the challenges might be, and then how will we train about this? How will people really know how this is to be administered and so on? So the equity committee said, let's first bring it to the board and see if the board will adopt the policy in the AR and also adopt the stance. So there were 2 board members, as I said, on the board. So they also recommended that we bring it to the board. So we brought it to the board, adopted it, and then the following year, which was last year, we put together a team, an equity. It was a little bit different makeup of an equity team. It was mostly teachers, I think, because we decided we wanted to develop the training and how people would have conversations. Teachers would have conversations with students and administrators. And they put together a video. I didn't think to bring the video, but we can show that at another time. So they put together a video that they shared with staff that introduces the policy and explains a little bit about what it means or how they might administer it or talk about it to students. So I also wanted to let you know that there's been another development with regards to equity, and that the Oregon Department of Education has communicated that there is a new Division 22 requirement, which is Division 22 is where all the laws are that govern schools. That we have to form a district equity committee with similar representation, and they have a very specific charge we have to do. However, we're not in the first round of school districts that have to do it. What they're going to do is work with some of the large school districts first and figure some things out, and then they're going to give us further direction. So because the stance was designed by a representative team, it was mostly based on the experience kids were telling us they were having in our schools. My recommendation would be that we don't change the language until we repeat the process with the new equity team. Because one of the big things we talked about that year, which was the year we also started our strategic planning work, the number one thing that everybody talked about is student voice. And we actually have a huge initiative we've been doing with our administrators for 3 years on student voice. In fact, we're going to go out and do more student interviews this next year for some of our academic work and for our strategic plan work. So student voice is firmly rooted in our core now, as where we want to come from. So that's just some background information, and now I'm just gonna leave it to Chair to manage the conversation.
Yeah, so that's the background of the equity stance. I guess I'll start with Dwayne, and what was your concern?
I had a concern with the first paragraph where it states, we commit to work. Let me rephrase that. I underlined what I want to say. We commit to. I don't have a problem with what it says, to work together. It's always a good thing. To be actively anti-racist. Great. Good idea. This is where my concern is. It says, and dismantle the systematic racism within our school district. To me, that implies that there is systematic racism in the district. And I have one board member who's mentioned to me that it does exist. The concern I have is that, like I said, it implies that there is systematic racism within the district. And I have scoured the minutes for the past year, and it's hard to spend that much time digging through stuff. And I did not see the board of the past year bringing up this issue of racism. The board, since its inception or its birth to the time that it dies, is a living board. It's ever changing. It's changed here this last year. And I hope it's good changes that come out of it all. The problem is, like I said, it implies that this systematic racism exists within the district. It's not saying we will address the systematic racism in our city or our county or our state or our federal government or in the world. It's in the district. So void of seeing any discussion, I'm led to believe that we've defeated it. And if we've defeated it, it should say we have successfully defeated systematic racism within our school district, comma, and we will give it 110% of our attention to ensure that it does not return. You wouldn't have written this unless there was some identified systematic. Now, systematic racism is different than racism. It says it in the policy here where it says we have been complacent regarding racist situations. So by being complacent of those racist situations, that's systematic racism by ignoring it. I highly doubt we're ignoring it. If we are, we need to be talking about it. But like I said, the biggest thing is I think we need to change this so that it does not apply, that it exists if nobody can identify where it exists.
I can identify one case of it for you right now.
I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I would love to know.
So the ELD stuff, the facts of and the statistics of the ELD program have some extensive underachievement of our ELD kids. That's systemic racism.
So systematic, it's said systematic, and the new word is systemic. So it's essentially the same thing. It's really, really close. So if you have statistics that are showing that it's underachievement of a race, then you have to show a system of advantage or disadvantage, a system of disadvantage to them, or a system of advantage to the white person or the black person. Or so are they identifying the system of disadvantage to those children, that group of children?
I don't know even know what you're talking about. Obviously, they're disadvantaged if they're not graduating.
How long have you known about this?
About what?
About these stats?
The ELD stuff?
Right.
A couple of years.
Have we talked about it?
Yes, we have talked about it for a couple of years.
And so what are we doing about it? It's a couple of years.
We're doing this. You just read about it.
The report that you just heard, these are also ways to, okay, so we hold these truths to be self-evident that we're all equal, right? You can take a group of people who start out equal and they're having unequal outcomes.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So the conclusion is that there must be something within the system that is preventing this group from reaching the same level of success of everybody else. right?
That can be true.
So,
That is true.
so you measure it not by the policies, because it occurs in ways that we don't necessarily see, but by the outcomes. And the other piece of this, if this was written by students, right?
Wrong.
It was
Students,
primarily
staff,
written
and
by
two board
students. There was some input from staff and board members, but the students wrote the first draft, and not much was changed, as I understand it, between the first draft and what you see here. So are you, who's not a student or a member of any minority group, going to come in and declare to those students that they are not experiencing what you're telling us they're experiencing?
I will not do that. I was
That's supposed to be what you're asking.
no, don't put words in my mouth, Mr. Chair. I am not. I'm the one that brought this up because I've scoured the minutes for the last year and have not found any discussion. Now, I said, I'm new to this. I may have looked over something or not looked in the right place, but I did not see a lot of discussion about this. And to me, if it exists, we should be talking about it at every meeting. We should be getting an update at every meeting. This is a big deal.
You kind of had a pandemic going on too. There was some stuff happening.
But the additional
Don't be mad at me
supports,
for bringing it up.
the additional supports that the district gives to the students who, as a group, are not having the same outcomes as, shall we say, the mainstream kids, is exactly how we fight systemic racism.
But
That's what we're doing.
But is it all racism?
And the staff are doing it day in and day out, and these are the programs like you've just heard about that are the way that gets done.
But is it always racism? And I'm gonna answer that, no. Sometimes it's a language barrier. Sometimes it's the EL, the 2 to 4 years of missed education, the IFE, right? That's not necessarily racism. What I'm asking for, here's what I'm asking for, is that we commit as a board to address this racism that you say exists at every meeting. We get an update at every meeting. Because I will not have my name associated with a district that implies that there is systematic racism without a discussion at every meeting about where we're at, and we need to be going forward, and the numbers need to be getting better. We need the stats to work with.
About 4 years ago, the state gave us money and gave every school district money for identifying groups that were underperforming.
Okay.
There were community meetings. Jeremy led that effort. It was huge. I don't know where you were.
I said in the last year, I've looked at the minutes in the last year.
And again, we were a little busy with some,
So that's where I was. I wasn't looking 2 years ago. I've been looking in the last year.
but we identified the groups that were our biggest underachievers. One of which, by the way, were boys.
That's not a race.
I know it's not racism. I'm just saying, one of them, I was kind of surprised that as a group, boys were underachieving.
Right.
Our job then was to identify what kinds of things can we do as interventions to help them, help each group. That takes some time, that takes some marshaling of experts and trainers and curriculum, yes, and you don't just change things overnight sometimes.
Right.
And we have to, as board members, we have to trust that our administrators are good and they're doing their jobs and they know what they're doing. And they're giving us reports.
Should be able to, yes.
I think part
We
of
don't
the
have
way
to.
you're saying is that a lot of the underachieving has nothing to do with race. It has to do with home situation. It has to do with kids getting into gangs and doing other things they're not supposed to.
COVID.
Oh, COVID itself, but that has nothing to do with race. In other words, it's not systematic racism. It's just something that happens. I've been involved with Head Start. Well, some of those kids really needed to be in Head Start. It had nothing to do with what color they were. They just didn't have a home situation that was conducive to learning.
Well, I don't think we're saying that everything falls under racism. We know that the problems at home that they bring to school. We're just saying this is part of the problem. We're not saying it's the whole situation. And I agree with you, that there are situations that cause a ditching.
In other words, what I'm saying is that,
Working to support
Yeah,
yeah.
all kids,
right.
you know,
Well, that's what I was saying, is that-
especially kids with disadvantages.
her bringing up the stats, that doesn't prove racism.
I think she's given us some history to do.
You wanted an example.
I know, but that doesn't prove any kind of racism. So a group of kids that aren't doing well, each kid is not doing well for a different reason, not necessarily because of its race.
So it's just a coincidence that they all happen to be from Guatemala.
Well, and again,
You just said some of them were boys. So it's not,
There
that's
can be,
different
two things can
challenges.
be true at the same time. So.
Can I tell you what my goal is? My goal was tonight for nobody to say there was systematic racism in our school district. My goal was to have this change to say we have successfully defeated the systematic racism within our district. That was my goal.
We can't say that.
I know, clearly we can't. That was my goal. And then to give the path board the credit that would have been due, and administrators that resigned this year, give them the credit. Clearly, that's not the case. So what I want is a commitment to work every month to bring this issue up on the agenda and talk about where we're at and tell stories. So I want to ask Yvonne, this Oregon Department of Education communicated this Division 22 requirement. When did they, and they've given us a date of 2025, September of 2025. That goes back to what you said, it's not going to be solved overnight. This takes time. When did they give us the communication that this was coming? Is this like in the last 6 months or was this last year?
Summer.
Okay, so just recent.
When the legislative session closed, they sent us information about some things that were coming. And that wasn't it. There's a list that's, I don't know, we haven't even gone through all of it.
This goes hand in hand. This goes hand in hand. It's very, very aligned. So
with what?
With racism, this equity committee that we are going to be required to form by September, and we're not in the first round. We could be in the second round, third round, wherever. I mean, we've got.
I can send you all the documentation.
Okay. So the last sentence, the committee could then host listening sessions of students and staff to learn about their experience. Why do we need the state government, the state of Oregon, ODE, to tell us that we need to form a district equity committee to host listening sessions of students and staff to learn about their experiences when we all know, or I'm being told that we have board members that know of this.
The state, I wasn't implying that the state needed to tell us to do that. Then finish my sentence.
Right, go ahead.
What I was saying is that we formed a committee before that was a representative committee. We heard from kids. They said this stuff is going on. We looked at our data. We see this stuff is going on. We're putting on all kinds of, we don't call it equity when we come to the board. Maybe what we'll do is say, and this is how this one addresses equity, because just about everything we do does.
Right.
So we can do that to help the board. All I'm saying is, I don't think it's right to change a stance that is written about kids' experiences without listening to them.
Right.
And so we need to listen to them again, but it needs to be a representative committee. And we're not positioned to do that right now because our plate is really full.
No.
But by the time we have to do this, we could combine both projects. You could be a part of it, part of the listening, but we're not positioned and ready to do it like immediately. And I'm just suggesting, I don't think it's gonna feel good to our family, our staff, our students, for us to just say, well, we don't think this exists anymore, so we're just gonna take it out.
That's not up for us to decide. As long as there are people that say it exists, we need to hear from them. I wouldn't be opposed to
We
hearing.
do, but I'm gonna tell you, people who are experiencing racism are not gonna come and speak in a public meeting to a board as people that are all.
They can
the
write,
dominant culture.
they can write a report and submit the report, and the report can be made part of the
Do
record.
you know how people feel that are experiencing racism? The fear.
So let's not even get into that, but reverse
Yeah.
racism is real. I understand skin color. I get it. I understand.
Okay, I'm talking about students who are very.
No, I don't. I don't.
I don't. either.
I grew up in a town that was largely Hispanic.
Why am Hispanic?
Back in the day, yeah, reverse racism is real. But I don't recall, that was 20 some odd years ago. So the answer is no, but I just want to commend that we can work on this and address it monthly so that when we go back, they can see that we're doing something. And I'd love to see a report from.
We work on it all the time.
So to your point, if you go back through the minutes of the last year.
Yep.
And look for the word equity.
Right.
Which you're gonna find a whole bunch. All of that equity work is trying to support disadvantaged groups.
Right, but
Not all the ethnic groups,
but what I'm missing is the story. What I'm missing is the stories from people who say that the racism is existing, or the reports of racism occurring in schools, not from board members who are implying that that the racism drives the data. That's what I'm missing. We gotta have these reports. If it's happening, it's gotta be reported to the principals. It needs to be reported to the superintendent. It needs to be reported. I'm speaking. It needs to be reported.
Luckily you are, you should lower your voice.
The people in the other room, I've watched these board meetings plenty of times to tell you that this technology that we have is lacking.
We'll all speak to one another with respect.
Wayne, I was just asking her if they were any kind of minutes or anything from those meetings with the kids, but they said that they can't record those kind of things, things that would make the kids feel unsafe.
That's understandable.
So that's why they don't have anything.
Yeah. So I don't expect a child to come here to a meeting where adults are here to do the business of the district. We did have earlier this year, a young child that came in to talk about equity and all that over sexual orientation and all this. So I know there are people that will come out and speak, but look, I don't want to waste a whole bunch of time on it, I'm not saying waste. I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time on this here. What I want to see is this board working every month on it. I'd love to see a report from the principals, from the superintendent, any correspondence to staff, to board members about these racist, the racism in the school, confirmed racism, not implied racism based on data. So I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Ask your bar of what racism.
Nope, I don't.
Can't
That's
be
not for
what
me to decide.
else.
Facts, data.
You just said
already
you
are
didn't
deciding.
want. Yeah. you just
No, I'm not
didn't-
deciding anything. Can you clarify how you think I'm deciding? I'm not demanding that this be changed. How am I deciding?
I think when you were asking us to declare that racism doesn't exist.
I never declared that. I never asked you to decide that racism doesn't exist.
You asked us to take it out of the document. You did. You said that was your goal in coming.
That is, I would love that. I would love to see that day where we as a board, where you as a superintendent, where teachers and folks that work with these people can say that it doesn't exist in our school district. We'll never defeat it at the national level. We'll never defeat it at the state level.
At the national level, I meant you asked to take it out of the document and declare it doesn't exist.
No, I never said that. Please don't put words in my mouth. The record will show. If we're not hearing, if the board is not hearing about these incidents, we can assume that it's not occurring. And then I would make an ass out of myself in demanding that it be taken out. But I'm asking the board to address this issue every month. I'm going to. So be prepared.
So can I ask,
Yes.
what are you looking for in the report so that the people that are gonna compile it will be doing what you're hoping to find out?
Facts.
About what?
Racism.
About how does that manifest? What are you expecting to see? Like details about something or?
Black kids coming to the principal saying the white kid is being racist, or Guatemalan kids coming to.
Those would be
their
racist incidents, that's
Right.
different than systemic racism.
Racist incidents that we refuse, systematic or systemic racism is when we refuse to address it.
They're not the same.
That's not the same.
No, I'm afraid it's not the same.
Racism is
Look it up.
systematic racism are systems of advantages and disadvantages. Disadvantages, right?
But
If
what
somebody-
you just said is us bringing stories of racist incidents.
And those are often underreported, and when they are reported, they don't necessarily rise to the level of board attention.
Well, and they will be, there will be disciplinary action likely. Because that's what we're required to do by every child, every student belongs, so that's not something we can report.
So what we can hear are reports about how we're working on equity, and when we have reports on education, like outcome numbers, that's what we can hear from staff. Is that true?
Yes, and Brian can tell you about some new work we're doing this year, which I think you'll all be excited about because we've been trying to get this out the door. Brian, our data cycles.
So, what we've set up is a cycle to look at data across our system. So, our system includes, from board members to district administrators to building administrators and on down to the employees of the teachers and EAs and everyone else in the district, okay? And so we put together a cycle of when during the year we get different pieces of data. So for example, in October, we get reading data, reading fluency and comprehension data for our K-5 students. Actually from all of our students, but let me just focus on K-5 for a second. So we get that data, and historically, we use that data to improve instruction. So we use that data specifically to then address the needs of the kiddos. And those that are struggling, they get more support. And those that aren't struggling, they maybe are put in larger groups and work on some extension skills. And those that are struggling get more support. And so we've always done that. But one thing that we're adding this year is making sure that we're reporting that data live throughout the year. So after we do that in October, that's something that then I'll bring to our cabinet. Our cabinet will take that to our administrators, and our administrators will make sure they're sharing that with their building. We'll also include the board in that cycle, to where you're hearing in the fall how our fall benchmark reading data is. You'll hear how our fall benchmark math data goes. And there's other bits of data that we get at all different times through the year. We get our graduation data in January. We get, and I won't go through the whole list, but we get all these different pieces of data at all different times of the year. And I've set up a cycle, or we've set up a cycle to where we know when those are coming and we know how we're going to share them. And you're included in that cycle. So if you want to know how students are doing, all students are doing, disaggregated by those different categories that we must look at, those students that are historically underserved, we'll be able to do that, and you'll be able to see how those students are doing. As a system, this is a healthy cycle to have, because it not only helps the students get the immediate help they need, but also over time we can see how we're doing.
And in those, we'll also be talking about the strategies that we're doing. I mean, we just spent some time in our admin meeting right before here, listening to our administrators about data they were looking at and what is it they're doing? What are they and their teachers talking about? Because sometimes even at the central office level, we don't always know school by school exactly what it looks like they're doing. Like we know everybody's doing literacy. If there's a new literacy program, which we have, we know they're all doing the professional development. But what does it really look like in each building, and what are they hearing from the kids and from the staff, like celebrations, like when a kid says, oh my gosh, I can read this many words more a minute than I could last time. Those are the stories we can bring that show kind of not only the strategies we're doing, but just some of those celebrations around what they are. So there's tons of data for us to cull it and go through it. We have to do it in an organized way, and we have to keep repeating the cycle so you can see when there's changes, which is why we've put together this. The other thing I will share, especially for the three new board members, is the process that Tammy was talking about. Is that they were just finishing it up when I got here, was for what we call the Student Success Act, or the Student Investment Money, which is SIA, Student Investment Account, has now been combined to these other monies we get, and they've required this big plan. And so we had to go through a process last spring to re-look at the data, re-talk to groups, which included parents and community, especially from those underserved groups, and to see what they felt we needed to do. So we've written a new plan and we have a lot of new strategies to do. So when I talk about timing and when we can do things, we can't do things on the spur of the moment because the list is so long of what we have to do just to run school every day and then for all these new strategies that we're doing. But all of them get at where are students not achieving, so that we don't have systemic racism or systemic underachievement by students who are economically challenged, or by students who don't speak English, or by boys, you know, whatever group it is, we want to be slicing and dicing the data, looking at all those groups. And there's a lot of complicating, confounding variables to look at, because in, you know, I learned this through my doctorate, you can't look at causal data in schools because there's too many variables. There's home life, there's school life, there's how the playground activities are. I mean, all those things impact a kid. But when we do a very focused strategy where we all have our efforts on one strategy, we can kind of look and see how is it doing as a strategy. And that's the kind of stuff that we'll be bringing to you. So that's how we deal with all of those isms that cause students to not meet the levels we want them to. So we'll just call it out more clearly when we come with those.
Okay. We will never alleviate racism, but we can combat systematic racism. And when we see racism, we can do something about it. And that means that systematic racism, essentially to me, doesn't exist anymore. Racism will never be.
Well, and that's why the every student belongs policy was so important for us, because it mandated that we no longer allow racism.
And so we're complying with that policy, right?
Absolutely.
So then so we are not systematically racist because that policy didn't affect.
Just because there's a policy doesn't mean you're doing it. You have to teach, you have to train, you have to.
You can snap your fingers and do. It's something that
we can decide.
And it includes how students treat students.
But we can decide to not tolerate racism.
That's what the standard
That's part
says.
of defeating systematic.
That's what it
racism.
says. Yeah. Is that we're not going to tolerate it.
And it implies that we're still tolerating. I'm gonna leave it at that. I brought it up. It's on the record. I hope we can talk about this and get some real data. This 2025 plan to have by ODE is a great idea. It says the committee, our committee that we create, could then host listening sessions of students and staff to learn about their experiences. And that's what I want to hear about. I don't want to hear about these racism experiences, but they're here, and when they occur, I want to hear from the staff, the administrators, and hopefully students, whether it's written or verbal, on how it was handled to ensure that you folks are handling it correctly, and that we can see that and the public can see that. That's
That
the
probably
goal.
won't come to the board, just so you don't have unreal expectations, because that, yeah. So, yeah. But we'll bring what we can.
Thank you. That's all I'm asking for.
All right, moving on to administrative reports and discussions. Ron, you're up there again. Superintendent update.
Yeah, so basically the video that we had at the very beginning showing all these pictures, and most of you were at our welcome back. But my update is really just celebrating all the amazing work that went on this summer and how many staff members were involved in that work. We had professional development around creating, it's called Peace Learning Circles, which is about creating community. We had many teachers involved in essential standards and identifying which are the most important standards, because I think somebody did some research and said our students would not graduate till 2022 if we taught every single standard that is in the standards. So our teachers look at the standards and say, which are the highest leverage ones? Which ones are the most important? And we call those essential standards. We also had over 35 people at the Professional Learning Conference. We had a team at each of the levels working on the math curriculum adoption. Right now, I think I heard Jeremy say we're piloting 6 programs, which is a lot of work for our teachers. And then they'll be making a recommendation to the board on math curriculum. We also have had guiding coalitions in every single school, working before school started to figure out how they would bring staff together and provide the professional development. We did our first full week of new teacher orientation. This has been a dream of mine since I started as a teacher, because the onboarding is usually so quick, you barely know what's going on. And we got some great feedback from people at the very end. Teachers were saying, oh my gosh, I know who to go to in my school. What we did is provided half a day like information, and then the other half of the day they'd work with their mentor at school. So showing them, where do I order pens, and where's my mailbox, and what do I need to have in place for the first day of school, and something that we hadn't put together before, mostly because we hadn't had any resource to pay people to do it. We had some money left from our CARES, our ESSER money, where we could pay mentors and our instructional coaches and our administrators together, put this week together. And it really was, they named it WOW, Week of Welcome, and it really was wow. And some of the comments, like there was one teacher who's a new teacher to our district, but he's not a brand new teacher. I think he's taught for 21 years. And he said, you know, I thought this was going to be a boring week, and I was going to go, yeah, I've been through this before. He said, but I'm going to tell you, I have never come to a school district where I felt like I really belonged from day one. He said, everyone, I can tell everyone's there to help me. I know where to go for everything. He said, and I should know what all the questions are to ask. But we had brand new teachers in the group who were saying the same thing, and they've never been a teacher before. So that really warmed our heart, made us feel just really motivated to even work on it better for next year. We'll continue to be looking for grants because we don't have a lot of resource to pay mentors to do it. We can only invite the brand new teachers, and we have teachers who are in their second year and their third year who are saying, I really want to be involved. We invited them to come, but we couldn't pay them. We didn't have enough mentors because we need to pay mentors. It's a lot of work. So it's something the state used to support through a mentor grant, and then the mentor grant went away, and they started this whole new strategy called the Regional Educator Network. So that's where all the money is getting funneled, and a lot of our teachers are participating in that professional development, but we don't get a list of who participates, so it's really hard to help support the teachers when they come back. I'm on that governing body, and we're trying to figure out a way to fix that challenge. But the downside is school districts no longer get mentor money from the state. So you have to take it out of your, wherever you can save little pieces and stuff. We also had just a lot of summer learning for our students. We had summer school, we had ESY, which is for our students with special needs. Sarah was the leader of our kids program, which is kind of a jump start for kindergarten, teaches them kind of how to be a kindergartner so they can be ready to sit on the floor and those kinds of things, how to get along with their peers and so on. So those of you who were at Welcome Back got to see teachers stand up. We had a lot of them participating in the summer events, which was really exciting. And we just keep hearing from everyone that this just feels like a whole different start that feels warm, celebratory, which, by the way, is our goal. We're going to celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. So that's what went on this summer, and the video that's just showing all these pictures of teachers together learning. That's my update for this month.
Do you have any numbers on that open house at the high school last Thursday? Was that a pretty good turnout?
Open house, the one that was the birthday party?
I had a meeting on Thursday night. I did not go, but really.
I don't know numbers. I'm sure the high school has, only if you get them, but.
It was a great house. It was fun.
I'm wondering how many people turned out. Hundreds?
I don't know. Because I only stayed a little short part and I didn't ask them.
There was lots of cake.
That's good to see.
I did see community members coming in who seem to have not been connected with the schools for a while, because maybe their kids and grandkids have graduated, that were coming to get annuals or just to see the pictures and connect with people. And that was nice, because I saw people I've never seen before from our community.
Okay, well, thank you for that, and now on to finance office update. Celia?
You guys always love hearing from me.
Yes, we do.
So a short report tonight, we have our new auditors, coming out starting next week to do their interim audit work. And, we're really excited about that.
Is this Rogers?
Polly Rogers, yep. And, the software conversion is going very well. We are on track. September is payroll month, and we've been really intense, a lot of intense sessions setting up our payroll in the new system. October is general ledger, accounts payable, budget, and HR month. That will be a very busy month. But we are on track to go live January. So we're looking forward to that, and also a little nervous about it, but they'll be fine. Visions has been very nice to work with. They're very informative, and we've been able to get questions answered, and we're just really moving forward with that. This year, our finance office and HR office are working together with Rita and the group to get out into the buildings more. So we plan to go out, kind of tag team and be in buildings several times a month. I know 2 staff have already planned to go out and work with office managers on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we're excited about getting out and seeing everybody. And in September, so this is our first full back to the year payroll. September is when all the teachers come back, and we have our 500 checks that we process, and a couple of different things about September payroll. This year we have, as we talked about earlier, we added a Kaiser medical plan to our group. So we have MODA and Kaiser both through OSEA. And that will be different this year. And also the paid leave Oregon, which is starting as the staff will see the deduction in September. And we've talked about that earlier in the year, and we'll be sending out a reminder again this year. So staff will see that on their checks. And then a part of the software conversion, we and I are planning to put together training starting in October for office managers. And do we decide once a week, twice, once a month, or twice a month, depending on. And also, we're planning a stakeholders meeting, so that will include administrators, office managers, and anybody in the district that will be impacted. Heads up on the new product. So that by the time we're go live in January, everybody is familiar with the system and ready to go, and it'll be a seamless start to the new calendar year. And that's all I had at this time.
Question, Celia? Sure. There's some confusion. I talked to a couple staff members, teachers, and support staff folks that were confused about the paid leave Oregon, because for the average employee in Oregon, they will contribute 60% of 1% of their salary starting in January of this year, and the employer contributes 40% of the 1%. So in this case, I reached out to the at the return to work or the week of welcome thing at whoever does the benefits, I forget the name.
Becky or Sherry.
With what's the name of the company?
American Fidelity.
American Fidelity. And she explained to me that they're managing because they have and it's approved through the Oregon Department of Labor, and that there's already monies in there that they're using to, the employees will get essentially the same or better service.
Correct.
And it will cost them less.
That's correct. And if you, employers had a choice, if you wanted to go through the state and have a state manager plan, you would have to start withholding in January. And the other option was to go through an approved third party, and American Fidelity was one of those approved parties. And in that case, you wouldn't have to start doing withholding until September. And we chose to go through American Fidelity and not start withholding until September. The benefits are the same. you couldn't start taking leave before now anyway. So if you started withholding in January, doesn't mean you could take leave, then you'd have to wait until this fall. And that's why we made that decision, and it saves staff, 9 months of taxes.
Saves some people some money, and it's a better product when you can deal with people that you already know. A lot of people already deal with Becky and for other insurances, and so I think all in all, it's a win-win. So anytime you can take it out of the state's hands, and most people will like it. Thank you.
Thanks.
So because we're celebrating everything we can this year, I would love to just appreciate, and I know my directors don't like when I do this, but I think it's important to appreciate Rita and SLEA and how they work together in their departments. Remember last year at this time, we don't even want to remember that part, right? You brought it up. I know. But only because I want to celebrate where we are this year and how smooth it was, how well their teams are working together. Remember, some of our finance office people had literally just come on board that first week of school, and now they've had a year. I love to run into them in the hallway. They're really excited about our transition to Infinite Visions and to having software that can really produce data for us and have things smoother, so there won't be so many steps for office managers, employees, really everybody. And so thank you both and your teams, please, for a really smooth start to the school year. And anticipating, we know it's going to be a lot of work, so we said we got your back, but we're excited that we're on schedule and staying on schedule to do the conversion, because it'll be good for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm gonna just say, you say the directors don't like you to do what you just did, but I work for a living, and when I go to work, I look for somebody to come to me and tell me thank you. It means more than anything you can give me, or a raise. It means so much. So you can do that all you want. Any leader can do that all they want. And
it does, just not in the board meeting.
I'm new to it.
Perfectly fine.
I knew it. I heard the horror stories of the past with finance, and I'm gonna go there, and it sounds like it's good. And so you or Tanya or anybody who's in a leadership position, or any of the employees can come up here anytime. I'm here. I gotta go to work tonight at 10:30, so I'm all ears till 10:05. You can applaud and.
Well, we've only been here since 7, so
I had 3 hours sleep.
We won't be here.
But you can do that anytime. You got my support.
We're on to business action items, and the first one is English language development that Jimmy spoke about earlier.
So this policy that we need to adopt is, the good news is we were already doing all the things we needed to do. We just didn't have it all written down and on our website in a place people could find it yet. And part of that is we had one person doing all our ELL work, Michelle Hilton at the high school, who's amazing. And here we were during COVID, we're trying to do everything. We now have 2 more ELL teachers, which we've grown students. We have a director who supports the work that they're doing, and more administrators and teachers involved. So, but Michelle has been doing the right thing all along the way, just hadn't written it down. So preview to you.
As I mentioned before, we're trying to put that all down so that as we move forward, it's very clear for all parties, and that we're serving students better. So the ask simply is that the board recommend the use and implementation of the policies and practices that were outlined in that document.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Well, thank you to Michelle Hilton. That was.
And this is the big equity one, if you want to know. Yeah. For English language learners too.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Motion is unanimous.
Thank you.
And then we have policy section G on the first read.
Right, and I'll just give a little bit of, again, history for new board members. We started going through a rewrite of all of our policies in 2019, 20, I don't know, one of those years, and when COVID was blowing everything up. And it took us so many months to get through the process that we're now on the last section. We also had so much transition in our HR office that we were really wanting to make sure we had people with expertise, because almost everything in G section is law. So there's not a lot of choices at different choices in there. So we are bringing to you section G. The only thing that's not in there are policies that the 2 board members who are on our committee. Three. But when we met about this, when it was you and Jerry,
Right.
and we have some policies pulled out that we had more work to do. These are all the policies. They didn't pull out for any really discussion or anything different because they're mostly law. And so that's what we have before you right now. And so the way it usually works is we bring it for a first read, gives you a chance to look at it, discuss it, ask any questions for us. We bring it back to the next meeting for a second read, and that's where we ask you to vote on it. And the reason it's coming as a whole section is because we're just finishing off the rewrite. And as soon as we're done with that, Tanya and I will be following up with all the new legislation that just passed. We don't have all the rules on it yet. And then when we bring it to the board, we bring it policy by policy. So there'll be time for you to discuss, get your questions answered and everything. This one is just one whole section because it's finishing up and it's mostly law.
And expect that second read to come back in October at the regular.
Yes.
And is where?
It was attached with your packet.
Because I couldn't go open up my.
Oh, okay.
Your
Google
folder.
Docs. Okay.
So I can with this now, but I had to go home and after I got this fixed up.
Well, you still have plenty of time. You have time.
I'll be able to do that fine.
And when we do the rewrite, the way we do it is we put the cabinet members who have responsibility for those policies along with 3 in the beginning, board members, and they do the detailed read through it. And if it's pretty much same as normal, or if it is just what's in the law and it has to be there anyway, they kind of give us the, okay, these we're gonna just move forward as a chunk. And then they also identify here are the ones where we still have questions. We had some we wanted to wait till Rita came on board. And then we have a few left over from other sections, and we'll be bringing those next time, right? Correct.
And we belong to the OSB updating, so we can get these as they come out, so.
Yes.
The ones that are new, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they give us sample language, and both they and COSA, which is the superintendent or administrators organization, is telling, they've sent us some write-up. It's many, many pages long. But none of them have definitive rules yet. So we have to wait till the rules committee develops the rules, but they give us a heads up on the kinds of things that we're gonna have to have in place. And then in November, we'll bring to you Division 22, which is where all the laws are, where we are required to declare to the board if we're out of compliance or whatever. And we've been trying to get in compliance with a few of them. I think now we're all caught up, but I haven't looked at the new list to see which ones they want us to report on, because we don't always have to report on all of them. Depends on what they say.
You don't have an overwhelming amount like this. Is the point she's making.
It won't overwhelm you the first time.
Yeah, it's the first time.
Yeah, I like that in June.
What?
Be glad you weren't here in June,
Right.
several sections.
Do you have plans to bring another board member back in to bring it through? Or are you done with the board member?
That work is done,
That's done.
and so now it's the whole board. We bring every policy to the whole board.
The board had selected a committee.
Okay.
Prior.
That's done.
Hopefully, we will do that again, so we don't have so much to do all at once, like we
Right.
did this time.
Well, and the benefit is now OSBA then, what do we call it, houses our policies, and they keep us on a schedule to update them so that they don't ever get so far behind.
We were really. And
The
they,
living document, right?
Yes.
OSBA usually gives us recommendations, it'll say, you have to do it this way, that's the way the state says, or it'll say highly recommended or strongly recommended or something like that. And then it'll say, up to you. You know,
Yeah.
something like
And
that.
some they just say you can delete because they're
Yeah.
Right.
obsolete.
will become covered in some other part of policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So most we follow the recommendation, but then they always put in brackets, here's where you have a choice.
Right, yeah, I saw that.
That's right. You've got 3 days of it.
And we have our own policies.
Yes, and you can, but then they like to have review them to make sure that they go along.
Right, right. And then we have OSBA review them, and sometimes we'll have our own legal counsel, which I've heard Jillian Nancy on the 25th. They also go. Right. We usually call both attorneys from both. OSBAs are free, and the others we pay a little more for.
I don't think they're free, but.
Well,
but if you
we already paid them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're in the price.
Okay. Do we have to do something with policy GCAB before? That was social media.
No.
Okay, well, that's a first read basis,
And then my last one.
right.
You might be bored by now.
What?
Of course.
I know. I try not to make the meetings be all about me, but
Right.
I guess this first one, you'll hear from more directors and principals and stuff. So this is a draft that actually has been in front of the board multiple times since last March, I think, when they finished my evaluation. At the same time, I bring a draft of goals. You'll see the goals are the same ones that we have for the district. Number 1, 2, and 3. What I did is put the district goal up above, so you can see what that is, and then my goal. So it's like, this is my responsibility based on that district goal. And we have 3 goals. And then the board asked for goal number 4, to ensure the district is in compliance with all local, state, and federal regulations and reports. And there's plenty of them. How many reports? Like close to 100, 180 billion. Yeah, there's a lot of reports we do, a lot of compliance work we do. And so we'll continue to give you updates, especially by mid-year, on how we're doing with all of that. And then goal 3 was one that the board wanted to do as a shared goal with me, and that is develop and implement a communication and engagement strategy for informing the community about the district achievement and current work. And the part about the achievement is going to be our data cycle. So we will have these presentations and we can go out in the community if a club wants us, like Rotary or one of the other groups wants us to come and talk about the school district data, how our kids are doing, what strategies we're doing. We'll have that presentation we've done with the board to take it out. So that is that part. We've also worked on some other strategies. I'm working on getting somebody who has experiences like a local journalist to summarize our board meetings. Some people want to know about our board meetings, but don't have time to watch the whole video, and maybe might not be watching it. So just writing a summary that is kind of community friendly language about what all we did at the board meeting. So that was one strategy we're working on. And the other one was just to make sure that board knows all the opportunities when you can engage with parents in the community. And the best way to do that is participating in our school events like our open house last week. Saw you at Meet the Lions, right? Sometimes you go there because your kids or grandkids are there, and sometimes you go there because you're a board member and you just want to see the schools. I mentioned to the principals that we were going to be informing you about those and really asking you to have representation from the board at all of those. I know we probably can't have you do all of them, but maybe you can divvy them up. They would really love to see you in their building where their kids, their families are there. And it gives you a chance to see what they're doing in that school and interact with them. So those were some of the key strategies, but we'll talk about more because this is a year-long piece of work. And then to my evaluation, you have to vote on this tonight as per my contract. You need to confirm my goals, but most importantly, the evaluation process. So mid-year progress on the 3 district goals, I will present, and then I'm in January, and I will also present my superintendent self-reflection on all 5 goals. So not only how is the district doing on those goals, which you'll hear from our staff, but then I'll also do a presentation kind of on the work I did around those, or how we're doing on the other 2. Then there's a targeted survey. We have groups of people that we have questions already written that the board has used consistently. So that survey Tanya sends out to random people from different groups that work with me directly on that survey. And then we all get together and look at the results together, have a discussion about it. I get to answer your questions in an executive session. And then the chair works with the board, writes up a narrative summary that you present to me. And then there is just a short public statement that comes to the regular board meeting that the full board votes on. And that finishes up my process. And then I usually try to identify here are areas for my draft goals for the next year. So kind of started a calendar there for you with the dates.
So we're going to do the staff survey prior to conclusion of this evaluation, right? We talked about
the morale survey. So the morale survey is in March.
Because we talked about that we needed it for this evaluation.
It was talked about, but what I was instructed was we wanted to do it before spring break in March. So we don't have it scheduled for before this.
Right.
I'm
a firm believer that we need to hear from staff before your evaluation is completed.
So you too in the targeted survey.
Well, that targeted.
Right.
You also have.
Oh, you also will have the
You have a
youth
youth survey that we'll be taking in January, and those results will be, November, December, and those results will be read in January.
What is that?
The youth survey.
Youth Proof.
Okay.
It's a survey that goes out to staff, students, and families. So you'll get all of that data back in January before you do my evaluation.
So the last one was done and we got the results in June, I believe, via email, but we've never brought that to this board.
Yep, that's what we went over with administrators today.
No.
No, she's talking about the morale survey.
The morale survey we did last year.
Yeah,
We've never
and we-
discussed it as a board.
We will be bringing that in October.
What'd you call that survey? The morale survey?
Yeah.
What's the reason? So I was like,
It goes to all the staff.
is that?
To take the kind of the temperature of the district, how the staff are feeling about a couple different categories, and they can go into more detail. So there's some multiple choice questions, and there's also an opportunity for them to write an answer out to give their opinion, and it's anonymous, so you can't trace it to a particular person.
Yeah, so so then that can be used on the next year's evaluation.
We actually used it more for goal writing. Like, how do we want to adjust what we're doing and the rest of
The goals for the district were built off of the results of the morale survey the first time it was taken, because the staff didn't feel that there was enough care and community, and so that's why the goals were written the way that they are, to build that and to make us accountable for building that back into our culture in South Lake School District.
So the targeted surveys are not anonymous, obviously, they're
No.
targeted in that.
They are.
But it's a more limited group of people that it goes out to. And the big reason that was done is because the first time we did it, it was COVID. We had a brand new superintendent, so the vast majority of employees had not had a chance to have contact, so it would not have made sense to survey them about how the superintendent is doing. If we didn't know.
So the targeted survey results will come back to the executive session for discussion.
Right.
Okay, fair enough.
So I do need to have the board vote on my goals and the criteria, the process of the evaluation tonight.
I'd like to hear more about Sherry. Sherry mentioned something about the morale survey and it being done in March. There's something that prevents it from being done sooner so that it can be incorporated into that, or
We try and do it at the same time every year.
No,
So that
we
you get
decided to
that
do it early.
Hmm?
We decided to do it earlier this year.
Right, so the
March is earlier.
March is earlier, it had been done like at the very end of May, which is really far. I mean, at the very end of the school year, there's a lot of fatigue, people don't really give it as much time as they put it another time of the year because they're so busy. And so the decision was to move that back to March, where there's a little bit more time for reflection and for really good answers for folks. And then that was really to see where people thought their work environment was, so that we could address that. Whereas the youth truth survey and the target survey are really more focused on the evaluation.
and the youth truth incorporates the students.
And the community.
Okay, well, I wasn't a part of that decision, and unless there's some kind of motion made, I'll trust that we can do it with the information that we receive, and there's always next year.
So how many are we gonna do in a targeted survey?
I don't know what we have.
I mean, usually it's such a small number.
I would have to look back on what we did prior and I can send that to you.
Before we vote on it, I mean, is it 100 or is it?
No.
Well.
A couple dozen, I think.
Yeah, that's not.
More than that.
I think it's on,
It's people
No,
who
it's very
work
couple.
directly with Yvonne. So that is a kind of small pool.
the questions on the targeted
It
and.
kind of needed to be that way the first time because of the situation. And the thinking of the board has been to keep it that way. So that it's apples to apples every year.
Okay, well, situations definitely
If you're
change.
asking the same questions to a different group of people. Then it's hard to correlate that to last year's results.
Right.
It's trying to
You got your
track year
baseline.
over year progress, ideally.
And then the youth truth will go out to every household, is that? That's also targeted.
Parents of students. So it's
Okay.
students, staff, and the students' parents.
What age group parents?
All
All of them? All of them, okay. And that's a new thing that we're adding this year.
Right.
And that goes out to every single one of them.
The opportunity is there.
Yeah.
But it's like any survey.
That's a lot of numbers then. Okay. I would like to know what the targeted is, and if it is a dozen, I'd like. I know.
He already said it's more than a couple dozen, so.
If-
The other thing is to remember, my contract, we have to stay on the timeline. You have to make the decision tonight. I had it scheduled for the August meeting, so you'd have a little bit more time. And also, we have to come to this agreement collaboratively. So everything that's in the evaluation process has to be something I also feel comfortable with and agree with. And the morale survey, you'll see by lots of the answers, and we talked to administrators today, it's predominantly how they feel about working in their building and with their peers and those kinds of things. The targeted survey is specifically to groups of people work directly with me and see my work on these goals that you've identified. Because the questions are about the goals and the work I do on these goals. So those should be tied to my evaluation, whereas the other should be tied to all of our goals setting, the morale district.
Okay, so do I hear a motion on superintendent goals and evaluation?
I move that we accept this calendar and these goals.
I second.
Okay. Any discussion?
We just had the discussion.
Seems that way. All right, therefore, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the motion passes unanimously. And we're moving on to upcoming dates. So September 25th is our next work session, and as discussed, that's going to be with Nancy Hungerford on the legal responsibilities of board workmanship.
And what time will that be?
Our normal time, because we didn't want to have any misunderstandings and things, so at 5:30.
So 5:30 for all of the dates on our list here.
We are also inviting the board and our administrators to a barbecue earlier than that. Because we thought it'd be a great opportunity for board members to just sit down and have a cooker or a hot dog or. I don't know, Brian's he's offered to do the cookies, so I don't know what we're having.
That's so 2 weeks from now.
Not on the agenda yet.
But it'll be prior to the board meeting, we'll give you the exact times, and we're asking our administrators, just come by and have a burger and sit down with a board member or two and just get to know one another, so you can get to know who they are, what buildings they're in, what is the work they do, how long they've been here, just those kinds of.
Be like an hour or two prior.
It'll be probably an hour.
4:30 to 5, I think is what we talked about.
Okay.
So Brian cooked the hamburgers for the volunteer appreciation, the community sharing.
Me and Paul.
Well, we don't want any of those pre-cooked hamburgers though.
Sherry, don't you worry.
Anyway, he did a chef that's very proud of his cookies.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, thank you, Brian.
All right, October 2nd, our next regular session. October 16th is our next work session, and that was with the facilitator for the other half of what we wanted to do on August 16th.
Right.
And with that, we are now down to board member reports.
Committee or school event program?
Or school event reports. So we're trying to keep it in the past, especially the past couple of years when there maybe wasn't a lot going on in the buildings for us. I think we drifted off topic a little bit. This is really supposed to be about things that are happening in the district, things that we might be doing with kids, events that we might have attended, things like that, to sort of give a little more input, background, and praise, whatever it may be. So.
I do have one number that they weren't looking for. It was sent to 52 people.
What's that?
52, how many? responded?
52.
How many responded?
48.
Huh, that's good. That's good as fast. Yeah.
Okay, so
Under pressure.
Thanks, sir.
we'll work our way around the room. Dwayne, you have anything you'd like to share?
I attended the return week or the week of the WOW on Monday morning, and
Oh, the welcome back.
welcome back.
Yeah, Monday was Labor Day.
Yeah, okay, so it's Tuesday, right? Yeah, so I worked, and then I got home, and then I went there. And I saw the support staff that was there that helped clean it up and put it all together, and thank them, and they did a good job. And the kitchen staff, they did a bomb job with the cinnamon rolls and the coffee, and kept me awake and engaged. And I just want to give a kudos to the support staff that makes this school work. We learned a lot about them during COVID, and they came together and made it happen. So I'll just get up. I'm new. That's what I got for now.
Very well, Joe.
So I did go to Meet the Lions. It was a fun event. I love student athletes and just the participation with all of our young people in there. And so, you know, I enjoy going to all the sports. I mean, all of them. Well, a couple of the golf. And the bowling. I mean, we have a really good bowling. I mean,
And that's great. Horses too.
yes, and horses, yes. You know, But what's crazy is you look at our cross-country team, girls and boys, the athleticism that is there is like, whoa, I love that. But then I also was able to attend the 20-year. That was, I'm like, where did 20 years? It's like, I remember walking around when they were building the school, and I was
How
like,
long ago did you graduate?
I graduated age. Yeah, so I thought it was a good turnout.
It was a very good turnout.
I got to talk to a lot of people that I haven't seen in years, so it was
You could
fun.
see the big staff picture of when you were in high school. It was there by the museum.
Right.
And so many of those guys are gone now. That was what was so sad, I thought.
Yeah.
That was a good staff. Not that we don't have good staff now, but.
All right, well, I guess, any segue to share?
So what I liked about the open house was the turnout was great, the museum brought old annuals and Letterman jackets and, Chris did a lot of the work. I thought he did a great job of marketing the open house and greeting people, it's just a really good time to get together. I agree where the 20 years go, but my 21st, I think it is, the hospital's going to celebrate their 20th year too, because we had the open houses and did them both at about the same time. So time does march on.
Those were two of the reasons we chose to move to Cottage Grove.
Oh, absolutely.
That showed an enormous
Yeah.
amount of community support, and we were well.
So 2 weeks ago, ESD had their welcome back, and then we had ours Tuesday, not Monday, Tuesday. And what I liked about both of the welcome backs for the ESD and South Lane was the staff involvement. Because the ESD, they had staff, do their presentations and talk about their programs. We had staff do the same thing. And that's what it's all about, is staff talking to staff, I think. And I think that made both of those very successful because of that. We had a very famous athlete graduate from Cottage Grove High School, and I never can say his first name, Doral Burlston.
Oh,
Dyrell. He is going to be inducted into the Collegiate Hall of Fame on Thursday at the Holt Center, and everyone is invited. On Thursday, September 14th. But he, he broke the 4-minute mile, one of the first ones to break the 4-minute mile. He went to the Olympics. I mean,
He still has high school.
and he's still alive. No, he was a great athlete. And what was it, the early 50s?
Yeah, 56.
It was before my time. So don't know that.
Yes. I actually worked with his grandson, Samuel Garrison.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so it's really interesting to talk with Sam, about what he had accomplished back then. I mean, to run it for 7 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
4-minute mile was unheard of. 83 years old.
Well, I was, when they inducted him into the archive of high school hall of fame, I was there that night. And
Here was he running.
1953, 3:55.
it says here he ran under Coach Bowerman in Oregon from 59 to 62.
800 meters.
And then he, in the 64 Olympics.
High school record is 155. That is, yeah. Yes.
He did it at 148.
In college.
So, Brian, will you talk about what we talked about at our new meeting, the backpack program? Did you want to talk about that?
You can delegate your time to me, yeah, right. I'm happy to do it.
I just thought that was.
It's awesome.
It is awesome.
So I'll do it in 30 seconds or less, and if you have any questions. I know. Go. Mike Fleck with Community Sharing got a grant to fill backpacks with food, and we're going to distribute them through our community care specialist network. Every Friday, 300 backpacks to all of our schools. We're setting that up later this month. I'll let you know how it goes.
That's fantastic.
You did it.
30 seconds.
Yeah, oh, room is spare.
I've got 14
standing time.
And then OSBA. OSBA's regional meeting is September 19th, 6 o'clock at ESD. That's always a good meeting for board members to go to. What are we gonna do about our student rep? Are we elected those yet, or how are we gonna?
The students that just got into
Yeah.
school, so.
Oh, I know that.
I was answering the question.
So anyway, it's on our agenda to do. And then I imagine we're gonna have an enrollment report real soon, Brian, like.
Yeah, we wanna wait, we wanna wait until after the 10-day drop.
Right,
Like,
right.
we have to wait 10 days before we drop any students, and so we can do that in October. For sure.
I just, whoever was responsible for organizing the welcome back, kudos, applause, it was fabulous. It's been a long time since we've had something that energetic and energizing and positive at the beginning of the year. It was just amazing. It was so nice.
And we know whose son did that.
Oh, and that video, my gosh, I told everybody about it. I said, this could have been at the OSBA convention.
That's a
you
good
know?
idea.
There was a lot of chuckles and laughs.
It was just, I mean, when you go to the OSBA convention, they have these videos that you watch and they're heartwarming and they're wonderful. This one was just, it was that caliber and better because it was ours, of course, but it was really, really good. And we need to like put it in everywhere that people can see it. So I don't know, really highlight stuff.
You maybe embed on the website.
I should put it on.
It is on the website.
Is your website?
Great.
YouTube. You guys are fun.
Excuse me, it's on our, it is in our YouTube channel.
Oh, good.
But it's also on our website.
Okay.
Wonderful.
So I really love the welcome back. There's kind of the same theme here. Was really great to feel the energy starting back to school, and I'm excited that kids are back in school, which means my kids are back. And along with going back to school means starting up fall sports, and Meet the Lion was very cool and super fun. If you guys get a chance to go, they do really funny, silly Olympics games. Like there's they had a frisbee thing, and they had where they would do the sandbags, and they would hurl them, and people had to catch them in a bucket. No, it was tennis balls, because they were bouncing, it made it harder. So there's lots of cool stuff. And I want to give a shout out to our new boys soccer coach, Jaime Aranda, is doing a really great job. And I want to thank Vern Stewart for all his amazing work up until last year, and thank him for his long tenure in Cottage Grove, with working with the boys and the girls, and welcome Jaime to his first season, and it's going really well. I watched 3 games last week. 2 were in the win column, and 1 was a really great developmental game that the kids can really learn from. And the girls team won their last game, which was really exciting. They've been struggling, and I know that they've been working really hard on the field. And I want to give a really big shout out to cross country, because those kids are doing some amazing stuff this year. And I will give a nod to Carter Bankston, because he won 2 cross country meets in a row. And he took this week off, and so hopefully we'll see some more of that in the next.
That first one was a huge competition too.
Well, the first one was smaller. That was like it was the icebreaker in Junction City, but the one the one before last, not this past weekend. The one before was up in Tullahoma. Yeah, that was huge.
Yeah.
And he ran a time that was on a really tough course, like through the river twice in this big mud pit, uphill through the forest, with an amazing time. And so I can't wait to see him run on the flat surface.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
He worked so hard.
I don't know if it was the equestrian car wash, was that the equestrian group? Because it was a kids car wash.
I didn't see I thought it was a dance group, wasn't it?
There was one there, but that the week before, that was
Okay.
one at Les Schwab.
Oh, okay.
They said it was the equestrian
That was
group.
a
I
dance.
don't know Fight with that, yeah. So I would- I paid a award.
Did they do a good job?
Yeah. Did they do a good car wash? Yes, they did. Yes. And of course, I went to the welcome back too. That was busy the other nights.
Okay, I guess that's me then. So just to piggyback on the welcome back, that was great, and the energy in the room, hearing about all of the development and learning that happened over the summer, and to see the teachers be excited about it. That was wonderful. Chess will be starting at the end of September, either last week of September or first week of October. At the high school on Wednesday, the middle school on Thursday, and Ace Charter School on Tuesday. And I do have a goal of getting a middle school and a high school team together this year, which would be the first time that's happened since we had a teacher that was leading the chess club.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely harder than not being in the school every day, getting the kids together and learning and having them have the opportunity to stop by on a daily basis and just play a game or something real quick. So I'm also gonna try and develop that culture of getting the kids to do that on their own at lunch or whatever. That's always been a heavy lift. But also speaking of being in the classrooms, I'm going to volunteer at Harrison. Looks like hopefully one afternoon a week, and I did that last year, and it took a while to get going. This year, it looks like probably by the end of the month we'll be in there too.
What do you volunteer to do? Volunteer with a teacher?
Yeah, I'm in the classroom helping whatever the teacher needs to do in my daughter's classroom.
What does she do?
At Harrison.
Does your daughter like you in concert?
Usually. Not always.
Like great, like speaking stuff. Anything, huh?
I'm not supposed to use her pet name in public, so either that definitely garners to get a harsh look and a reprimand. But the rest of the students really seemed to perk up when I walked in last year, and that was just very rewarding. I feel like I helped some kids, especially with their reading.
No, that's great.
So looking forward to doing that again.
Can I forgot, there's 3 teams we didn't talk about. We talked about all the sports.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So, water polo, brand new coach this year. They're off to, maybe a slow start, but lots of promise. Same with football. They've already scored this year. So improvements over last year, go football, and our new coach there as well. And then volleyball is going really well. I think they graduated. I know they were kind of concerned about how things were going, but their coach is amazing, and those girls are working really hard. So thank you to all of the kids that are out there representing kind of trouble. Yeah.
Can I say one thing? Thank you to the staff, everybody that worked all day for being here. And folks from both sides of a controversial subject for coming out and keeping it peaceful, stating your position and moving on. The back room was full, 22 people online for 2.5 hours, and this room was full, and it's great to see the community come out and watch us do what we do. Also want us learn to do it, and look forward to many more.
Very well.
So we're gonna have a discussion when we have our executive session, since we're all here.
I suppose we could at least toss out some tentative dates.
Would that be an emergency meeting, or?
No.
My first thought is, would it be possible to add it to September 25th? Since we're already moving at that time.
I don't think we wanna wait.
Okay.
I mean, that's my opinion.
Personally, I like to do it tomorrow, but I understand we'll work with everybody.
What do the rest of you guys feel like?
If it's 5:30, not every day for me.
I mean, Taylor, this is consuming, you know.
It is,
And so-
it is urgent, I'm
I
not discounting that, I'm just trying, it's difficult to get 7 or 8 or 10 of us to all
Agree on another day.
to all agree on another day.
I'm out of town the next 2 days. I'll be in Hood River. John up there, so
So Thursday you'll be available?
Thursday I'll be back in town, yes.
I'm available Thursday.
I am not.
Okay, I hate to ask for Friday, but if we're going down the list,
I'm available.
I'm available. I am not available Friday. I have a very important engagement Friday and Saturday.
Okay,
Sunday.
so now we're on to the 18th, which is Monday.
Oh. Yeah.
I do.
I'll throw my name out there as available.
I can't do. You get it.
Okay, the 18th, no good, the 19th.
Let's see, OSBA.
19th is OSBA, see, we're gonna get, we're about to hit the 25th. We're up to the 20th, which is a Wednesday.
I cannot meet on Fridays.
Okay, Wednesdays are out. The 21st is a Thursday. That's the hospital celebration at Peace Health.
I'm busy anyway.
Okay,
Sounds like it's a 20.
so can we all agree on the 25th?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we're gonna add executive session to the 25th.
So the barbecue's at 4:30, 4 to 4:30?
Yeah, am I incorrect though in that a public session must follow the executive session? I believe that's accurate.
It is.
Yes.
So not just a board session, but a board work session.
So we'll
public,
have 3 different.
yeah.
things.
You wouldn't have
terms on that
to accept
agenda.
public comment but it has to be a public
No, we know.
session.
Right,
If we're gonna vote. It has to be.
Yeah.
right, okay, so
So the executive would probably come after a work session, so we have Nancy all lined up and everything.
I think that's gonna have to be how it would be.
I think it's gonna be a good idea to actually have Nancy there,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of legal things that I really don't feel. I think she needs to share with the board,
I would
because
agree with you.
it's very, we're gonna have to be very cautious.
And it might be fortuitous that she's gonna be there.
That's kind of what I was thinking, like.
But
if
do we
she-
only have her for a certain period of time, or if she there?
Well, she can't come much earlier because she's in negotiations, but
Right.
she's gonna be online.
Right.
In which she can still be online for the executive session, so I think she could do.
Possibly what we possibly should do is maybe do the executive session first.
At 5:30.
That's kind of what I'm
then
thinking as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But do you have to do the public meeting immediately after, or do we?
But
have
you
to
just have to
follow
adjourn
it.
into, and you could adjourn right out.
Dave, what, I'm sorry.
We just have to adjourn into a public, meeting.
So you
So-
do executive session and close it, then we go into the public meeting and you vote, and then we'll go into the work session.
So it'd be a
public
executive,
meeting ideally.
regular work.
Yeah.
The public meeting is just a vote, matters that have already been deliberated in executive session.
Right, yeah, because you cannot discuss it when we come back.
Right, so if you do executive, then the public meeting for a quick vote, and then move on to our work session. Okay,
Thursday the 25th.
Sounds like
No.
coffee time.
That's Monday.
Monday the 25th.
Monday, September 25th, it's in my.
all I scheduled for that day is.
Nothing new, just plan to be here, it'll be longer.
Yep. Okay, and with that, the meeting is adjourned.